Hi there. Okay, we are on and on time. And welcome. So, I am Deanne Battle, and this is episode number 4 of the Composite. I did not go live last night. I was thinking about ways that I could switch this format up because I can't really do much about the production value at the moment. Interesting story. But perhaps, I was thinking, well, how could I upgrade this a little bit or whatever? So I was thinking today maybe it would make sense if people are watching live, if they would like to go live, that we could have a little chat. So that is the small upgrade that I have available, in terms of engaging with pop culture, clips, articles, and things like that. Still have to figure out the tech in this space. So anything that we do today will be similar to episode 3, where I kind of just turn the camera around and I show you my laptop and all of my tabs. All right. So welcome. Let's see. What I wanted to start with is a little bit of an ethical dilemma. Right. So this show is called The Composite. So it's, just me kind of talking about my life a little bit, me thinking through being a writer, teacher, me engaging with news, pop culture, articles, so on and so forth. But here's the dilemma, right? Because there was a certain town hall that happened this evening with a certain former president. Oh, hi. See, someone is here. Um, Again, a certain town hall happened with a certain former president, and a lot of folks are talking about it on social media. I just hopped on quickly on Twitter and a couple of other places before I got on the live. And here's the thing about that individual. They got so much free press, right? From all sides of the aisle. And so even though my quote unquote platform is really minuscule, it's really small, I just wonder if discussing any part of that town hall in this space maybe contributes to what happened in 2016. Now, from my personal perspective, that was not a good direction for the country to go in. I don't know about you, but I wasn't pleased. And so therefore, what can I do differently? So one of the things that I could do is maybe not give that person additional bandwidth on the internet. But on the flip side, that person has a lot of legal and other issues that are quite newsworthy. And so you can see, right, the conundrum of discussing or not discussing what happened in that space. So I'll hold off on it for right now. If more folks are able to hop on, if people decide that that's something that they want to chat about or want to see, then yeah, that's something that could possibly happen. But for the time being, I'm going to refrain from discussing said town hall. All right. Other things to think about on this Wednesday. Thinking about burnout versus rest, and what does that mean? Hold on a second here. This book, right, and it's showing up in reverse, so my apologies, but it's called Rest is Resistance. I thought that was going to be better. Sorry, it's not. And the author is Tricia, Tricia, Hersey, Hersey, right? And it's funny. That was a birthday present for myself, because I have to say I've gotten this far into life and I still don't know what rest really looks like. for me. And I've definitely felt, even slightly pre-pandemic, but definitely during the pandemic, that the well has been dry, right? What does renewal look like for me? What is that process? I haven't figured it out yet. But I bought that book for myself because my friends and acquaintances that I kept engaging with on social media, I kept seeing this book. And then someone, verbally recommended it. And I was like, you know what? I need to have this book. And so I have it. And I've literally just been too tired to even start reading it. Usually the analogy that I use for people is Haley Joel Osment did this movie called AI. Let me look that up at least, just so I can remember the actual year that it came out. And it's interesting that it was called AI, given what's going on with AI right now. Wow. Okay, so it came out in 2001. Okay. Pardon me. So the movie came out in 2001, and it's kind of like, in my opinion, what I remember of it, a revamp of Pinocchio. And so he plays a young boy robot, right? And as he goes along, he becomes like, more realistic in terms of, being attached to his family and, feeling and being empathetic and things like that. But the thing that always really bugged me about the film is that, hold on a second here. I want to make sure that I remembered it correctly. So he somehow gets separated from the family that he was with, right? And he aspires at one point to be like a real little boy. But the thing is that he spends, how many years is it? It was just a really weird patch of the film. Let me just find the part. Yeah, well, okay, if this Wikipedia page is correct, it's like 2,000 years. I didn't really remember it that way. But he gets separated from his family, and he is under the ocean, and it's just bizarre, and he like powers down. And there was a period of time during the pandemic where I felt that that's what I was doing. I felt like this robot that, I was going to work, I was present, I was engaging, and then something would happen when I would cross the threshold of my apartment, and then I would just like power down. And the reason that I bring that up is, for me, it's very emblematic of what burnout looks like for me. Like burnout looks like for me, what it looks like for me is that I just, I'm either like sitting or I'm like lying down and just blinking and breathing, right? Not really able to, pick up rest is resistance and do some reading for pleasure, not working on my short stories, not working on my novel, and so I struggle with how to, in terms of what the expectations are for employment and what I need to do for myself, the boundaries there. People are like, oh, work-life balance, but I have yet to see any employer really enlist practices that lend credence to that rhetoric. So in other words, I feel like managers are like, if they tell you, oh, don't forget work-life balance, then they can check that off. but they don't actually have to provide a space for you to be able to make that happen. It's a very particular type of gaslighting. And so all of this being said, in my mind, like a long weekend, or even frankly, any break that's like less than like 7 to 10 days, I'm just like in that power down stage. And it's like, I'll wake up later in the day, I'll talk to some people on the phone, I'll text a few people or whatever, maybe do a like on social media, but I'm not fully present in showing up for myself, right? In terms of things that I want to do, like, oh, this exhibit at this museum, it looks so interesting, but I'm so burned out and so tired that the idea of pulling myself together to do something fun for myself is daunting. And so it's been hard to sit with that, but I will say that I am at this point in life where I'm more self-aware and a little more reflective, and I'm at least able to articulate part of that, but articulating it and then doing something about it are two different things here. Hold on. Yeah. Now, I wonder if I show you a clip from something, what happens in terms of it being on Instagram Live. Do I get like blocked or banned or something like that? I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say at this point I can vouch for the internet maybe losing that much, but I am curious. I will be fully present in a second. They do have some clips. You know what I'm going to do? I actually need to watch this movie again because I only saw it a couple of times, but I don't know. There was something that was about that 10 to 15 minute sequence where he was just kind of stuck under the ocean and just sitting there for years and years and years after the film had spent all this time building up the character like, oh, he can really feel now. Like, again, Pinocchio, he's a real boy. And then he just sat there and everyone and everything that he cared about died. And he was powered down. And I just remember being so intensely disturbed. Maybe because like that element, resonates like in terms of thinking about how time passes, right? And time is really, I mean, if we're honest, the only commodity that we have. And so what does it mean to be in a space where you're burned out to the point where when you have moments of quote unquote time, you can't really utilize them. And so for me, that's like, definitely a moment of anxiety, something to think about. Let's see here. Other things that we can chat about. So yeah, again, in terms of upgrade, for content, the main thing that I was thinking about are ways that I could make this more interactive, but I do think that the 11:35 p.m. time slot is still a little prohibitive. So we'll see how it goes the rest of this week, but maybe next week, maybe bump it up to 11 o'clock. I still want it to be considered quote unquote late night. When we're thinking about like the old model, right, of daytime television versus late night television. Like daytime television is, oh, share your recipes and, tell me about, your kids and, very light, airy, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing. But when I think of daytime television, I think very like fluffy, very on the surface, so on and so forth. Now, when I think of late night TV, if you're anyone like me, I grew up when Arsenio Hall was a thing. And I also grew up watching David Letterman. And so those shows had, a really standardized format. But there was something a little dangerous there. Like, things could happen that you didn't expect. David Letterman, there's that iconic clip with Crispin Glover, which it's just... I want to look that up because I wonder if there's more than one. This is what happens when you try to Google with your right hand, even though you're left-handed. David Letterman. Yes, okay, I didn't misremember it. Yeah, the interview was going weirdly, which I feel like most interviews, in terms of the actor Crispin Glover, that's how the interviews go. But he like almost kicked David Letterman in the head. And it was like, what? What did I just see? Or Arsenio Hall, oh gosh, I hope they bring that to streaming. I wonder where you can find those old episodes. If anybody knows, let me know. I would love to see that again. I think at one point, didn't he try to bring that show back? But his moments, right, of that were quote unquote dangerous or where anything could happen was just like, I remember the type of stuff people used to say on that show. And so in terms of the vibe that I'm going for, if we're thinking about like weekday space, I would aspire to be more Arsenio, David Letterman versus, the daytime space. But the interesting thing is I think daytime is going to have to evolve, just because like different personalities are in and out. I know like Whoopi Goldberg is no longer on The View. And so I do think that there is room in that space for daytime to look a bit different. But, I know for obvious reasons, it's a bit more sanitized. And I envision this space as, I don't know, hopefully a little more renegade. Although, it's been pretty tame here. I haven't even really cursed that much. I think I should get a little bit of a cookie for that. But hopefully that'll change as, again, if people want to go live and engage, or as I work on the production value and things of that nature. What I was thinking about too, I was like, do I need a theme song? Like, it's when your budget is low and your aspirations are high, that's always an interesting dichotomy. Yes. But if you have not seen that, the clip is called Crispin Glover Tries to Kick Dave in the Head. All right. And then there was another moment with Britney Spears, and she was dancing for David Letterman and around David Letterman, and he was like super uncomfortable. That was hilarious. Madonna, anytime I feel like she was on his show, she was really confrontational with him, but I would find it funny because it's like, if you do have that platform and you're not challenged on a regular basis, to have her come in that space and, talk her shit I thought was funny. Drew Barrymore was funny on there too. She did a table dance. I mean, late night was really, really a crazy space. I mean, oftentimes not just late night TV. You know what else is interesting too? Game shows. Like when you look at game shows, especially from the 70s and the stuff that would happen there, and looking at it in 2023, it's all I can keep thinking to myself is, whoa, did the host of Family Feud just kiss all the women in the family? Like, what am I looking at? But I'm looking at it through my modern 2023 eyes, which actually brings me to something that I find really fascinating, which is, how do we engage with pop culture or with artifacts from the past? Because can you retroactively cancel things or people? And if things are always retroactively getting canceled, then what are you left with? I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not being too philosophical about it. And it's not that I'm a proponent of holding on to toxic curios or people or ideas. Not at all. I'm not like, oh, back in my day. Because it's just, anytime you start a discussion there, it's usually going to take you in a bad faith direction. So that's not what I mean. But, again, if we're thinking about again, the Family Feud, is there a way to engage with those old episodes and not immediately jump to, oh my God, he's a sexual predator? Now, not to say that he wasn't, because I don't know what this man's name is. I was not born or alive on this planet at that time. Hold on a second. I will look that up as well. And as I mentioned, for anybody that saw the first episode, one of the reasons that I look stuff up is because I like to make sure I'm not talking out of my ass when I can help it. Yes. Okay. So they've got a whole supercut here, and the man's name is Richard Dawson. So I'm going to say, quote unquote, fair use, but I don't know if that covers it. So hopefully this episode doesn't get dinged. I don't know how this shit works. We'll see what happens. All right. But I'm going to turn the camera around, and we're just going to watch this quickly and gently. All right. Yes. Gently. All right. All right. So just this first clip right here. Oh, yay. And we get a YouTube ad.
What if you could do SEO smarter and faster? With Wix, you can edit your meta tags page by page or all in one go.
All right, so I guess use Wix.
I'll never get to see Kim again. Thank you, baby. Bye. That's for luck. Come here.
What am I looking at right now?
Marvelous, lady.
Hi, Richie.
Who's gonna
Kiss.
Okay.
I mean, and the whole family is there, and everything, and just in everything.
Oh, God, thank you. Bye. I love you.
Hello. Is that? Thank you, Doc.
I mean, and even the COVID-ness of it all. I'm like, what am I looking at?
I've ever gotten aroused. Now we No, I'm leveling with you. That's the most passionate kissing. I usually kiss for luck, but I got involved a couple of times there.
I mean, that's intense, right? What? Okay, it's showing another clip here. Hold on.
I love all of you. I'll never get to see Kim again. Thank you.
All right, let me fix that. Okay, so yes, that was on YouTube. So I guess that the old host is called, his name was Richard Dawson. And it's just that, and as a kid, here's the thing though, like, okay, yeah, so I have some comments here. Yes, that is very weird. I totally agree. And so, but here's the thing. Seeing that, like, as a teenager and in my 20s, like, oh, you see like a random old clip or whatever. And it's like, oh, okay. And it registered as, but not like the intense discomfort that I have right now, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, does that count as sexual harassment? Like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, y'all, because stuff is so, the ways in which people physically relate to each other now, it's so not clear. And I mean, I think individually people, hopefully have an understanding of their personal boundaries and what they will and won't tolerate. But there's just not a cultural protocol. For example, like, pre-COVID, right? If you're going on a job interview or, get introduced to a friend of a friend, in the United States of America, you would typically shake hands, right? And that was accepted as a standard protocol. But, post-COVID, and I'm using that term, but I'm fully aware that, the COVID has not gone away. But so post-COVID, right, people will ask like, well, are we shaking hands? Or now sometimes people just wave or they fist bump or something. So there's been, right, a disruption in terms of how we understand that physical interaction. And so when we're looking at something like this, again, a pop culture artifact, the ways in which Richard Dawson is engaging with those women is like, it's off the hook. And their whole families are standing there like, oh, ha, 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 ha. So should those old clips be canceled? Should Richard Dawson be canceled? And I'm not being facetious at all. Like, I'm asking a dead-ass legitimate question. I don't know what I'm looking at when I see that. And again, especially with COVID being out there, I'm like, what in the Omicron are you doing right now? Like, you're doing way too much. I would be interested to hear from one of those women, like, looking back, how they feel about it. I don't know, is that something that the producers were doing? Being like, oh, well, he's going to kiss you, so make sure you, like, interact with him? Or was it, again, just an accepted protocol of that time? Like, oh, if you're going on Family Feud, if you're a woman, Richard Dawson is going to kiss you. And people are like, oh, yeah, okay, well, I'm going on Family Feud. Woohoo. And so I didn't mean to spiral out into a diatribe, but I wanted to give you a concrete example of what I'm thinking about around this topic. And so, yes, I'm talking about Family Feud, but what I'm really thinking about is, on a broader level, anything like pop culture related, or, movies, books, TV, so on and so forth. Like, if I find something out that I don't like about Bob Ross, do I now stop engaging with everything Bob Ross? And I picked Bob Ross because I feel like there's nothing wrong with him, hopefully. And then people in the comments, Bob Ross was this horrible person and he da da da. Another example. R.I.P. Harry Belafonte, right? Harry Belafonte died a week or two ago. And a lot of people on social media were doing, meme tributes and things like that, really recognizing Mr. Belafonte for, all that he did, as an activist, especially in the civil rights space, especially as, one of our pioneers, if you're Black, one of our pioneers in film, theater, and television. But a few people posted this quote that was from Eartha Kitt. And I'm going to butcher the paraphrase of it, but essentially she had met Harry Belafonte somewhere, and he had said something to the effect that she was too dark for him, that he had no interest in Black women. And so people were posting that and basically saying he was trash. And so I was sitting with that for a moment, because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, that is a really fucked up and horrible thing to say to someone. But at the same point, does it negate everything else about him? I don't know if I live in that space. I don't know if I live in a space where stuff is Black. Well, nope. Let's rewind. There are certain things that are black and white, right? When it comes to harming children, violating people physically. And like, there is a list of stuff where it's like, oh yeah, nope, you're done. Domestic violence type stuff. Like, there is a list. But what I'm saying is, as much as that interaction disheartens me, I don't know if he now lives in that space. Number one, I don't really know much else about him personally. This is just social media stuff. And I've consistently spoken about media literacy on the previous episodes of the show. So I want to make sure I'm being media literate in terms of what I'm offering. So I don't know too much about him personally in terms of how he interacted with people, specifically Black women. And then the other part of that is, do we tend to want to hold public figures to an unrealistic standard? Like, if he was just Harry Belafonte Smith walking around and he was a janitor or a bus driver, shout out to Ebony K. Williams, would people be as hurt or want to turn him away? Is it more about like the platform that he had, or disrupting the narrative of his legacy? Because that seems how people were using the Eartha Kitt interview. I really don't know the answer, but it's something that I'm thinking through, because I just, I don't do hot takes. Again, I've said that a few times, on previous episodes. I don't do hot takes. I really try to process stuff. And I don't know where that information sits with me, right? So, a Black icon, right? But now you find out this thing and you're turning around and looking at it, and what do I do with that? And there's another more salient example of that, but I'm going to leave that example alone, because there's just been enough arguing about what this gentleman did or did not do, and charges and all types of stuff. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm not gonna even breach that topic. Again, and not out of a place of fear, but just because you can't even really talk to people right now. It's just people don't want discourse. People want agreement and validation. And there are some opinions I cannot agree agree with or validate. So I guess that means we're not talking. Bye. You know? That's what it feels like, at least. But yeah, all of that being said, I was really disappointed to see that just being brought up about Harry Belafonte. I was just like, oh, I'm sad. I was sad for Eartha Kitt. I was thinking, like, in that moment, like damn, like, how did she feel, you know? No, I wasn't talking about Dr. King. And I vaguely heard of womanizing. I had not heard allegations of plagiarism. But yeah, that's interesting. I was talking about someone who is or was a mega comedy star and had a groundbreaking television show in the 1980s. So that was the example, I think most infamous example out there that I was avoiding talking about, because I don't really think that you can have a nuanced discussion about that at this point. And not like in terms of guilt or innocence, because honestly, that doesn't interest me. That's a legal issue. As a person that's curious, as a scholar, as a teacher, as a writer, what I'm interested in is what happens to that person's legacy and their body of work, right? So what does that mean for everyone that he employed, everyone that he gave a college scholarship to, everyone that he introduced to someone else and they were able to start their career? What does that mean for, all of those episodes of television, all of those movies, all of the people that worked on those sets? What happens to all that stuff that involved a community of people, whether it's a community of Black people, a community of actors, a community of entertainers? What happens to that? Is anything that he put no, let me rephrase that. I was going to say anything he put his hands on. No, we're not going to say that. Does this mean that anything that was in the purview of his influence, does all of that go away? Yeah. Thank you for engaging. I hope you're doing well this evening. And that's the part where people just like, well, no, don't show episodes of the show and don't show the movie and don't show da-da-da-da. And it's like, I am not going to say I fully understand, because I know a lot of those people that are commenting, right, are survivors of different really horrible physical traumatic things. But when you say stuff like that, what you're essentially saying is those folks that worked around him can't get paid, right? And I don't know. I mean, as a working class person, and I feel like I've spent a majority of my life, to be frank, thinking about economic insecurity and instability. I'm not cool with that. I'm not cool with those people not being able to be paid for something that they had like no control over, or they had no responsibility for any allegation, conviction, so on and so forth. Like, they had nothing to do with that. So now they can't get paid. Now they can't feed their families. I'm sorry. I don't live in that space. But I will say I am a person that I want to think through what that means. And I like to be intellectually consistent, right? And so I don't like to be like, well, I like this one over here, so he can abuse anybody that he wants, and he can do whatever he wants and be disrespectful and da 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 da. And then I'm just still going to buy all of his music and watch all of his movies, so on and so forth. And then this other person over here being like, having this like manufactured outrage. Oh, he said the word shit. I'm so offended. How dare you? It's like, really? Because you're a fan of this person over here. Like, what is going on? So I do think through that type of stuff, and think about how I can, because I have a deep love for pop culture and deep love for, books, movies, TV. I just love human stories. And I want to be engaged with those stories. So even gossip, it's like, what's the story there, right? Like, ooh, what did they say about so-and-so? They did what? Oh, like the storyness of it all really interests me. And so I don't think I'm a person that's super quick to be like, oh, get this person out of here. But I do, right, want to have a level of an ethical code, So if you say there are levels to this thing, it's like, okay, once we get to level 5 or 6, okay, I can't engage with that person or any of their cultural products anymore. But I'm still, again, talking through what that level is. And again, I've had a very particular set of life experiences, right? And so if you're someone who, like, let's say, and Alec Baldwin, right? He's in an interesting space right now. But I remember when that tape came out of him, yelling at his daughter, basically. And I think there were a lot of people that were really upset at that time. But what if that came out now? What? It would be like, oh, he's verbally abusive. He's this and he's that or whatever. But would it have led to him being canceled or being removed from the public square? I'm not sure, because he has a particular set of experiences and privilege, and it seems like he can do anything and just keep going. But I just remember at the time when it came out, it really sparked a really interesting discussion of how do you talk to your child when they're getting on your damn nerves, when they've disappointed you, when you're upset, because I could hear in his voice there was like an upset there about the estrangement. There was a level of estrangement from his child. And he was getting wound up about it. But does that constitute as abuse? Number one. And then number two, if you say yes, it constitutes as abuse, what happens to everything that Alec Baldwin has done, everyone that he's employed, so on and so forth? So I think it is a really important discussion to have, and to continue to have, because culture continues to shift. And I'll wrap up in a second here, but it occurs to me as I'm talking, these examples of quote unquote abuse in different regards are coming up, like verbal, physical, sexual. And maybe part of the reason people are so quick to respond is because so many people are hurting, or so many people have been hurt, and there's unresolved pain that they're working through. And so if you're feeling disempowered in your own life in that moment, but you can say, you know what, I'm canceling this person. I'm never gonna buy their movies or their music again, or I'm just gonna bash them on social media. Maybe that feels like agency, and that feels like a way to deal with some of that pain. But that's just something I'm just thinking right now. Yeah. Well, I mean, this conversation, me and you, um, I think it took a really interesting turn. And again, like, so the idea of the upgraded content, and really shout out to the person in the comments here. I'm not going to say your name because, I haven't had a chance to ask you if I can do that. But thank you for engaging with me and giving me, some energy here to bounce off of. But yeah, let's work on that going forward. Really having an opportunity to have an in-person or virtual in-person dialogue with somebody else about this world we're living in. It's beautiful and treacherous all at the same time. A lot of really fascinating stuff going on. All right. So thank you for joining me, Deanne Battle, on episode 4 here of The Composite. And have a great night. Oh, boy. It's so anticlimactic every time I try to turn this thing off. All right. Have a great night.